Marvel vs. Capcom had another video update directly with the developers on the Marvel side and the Capcom side talking about MvC in the future. So I'm going to click on this and I am going to go back just to make sure it was new. And I really want to check this out.
Marvel
Play it while the Wazzler's out of town.
A major series for me my entire life. I immediately fell in love with them.
さっきと話通ずるんですけど、やっぱり望まれてるし愛されてるタイトルなんだなっていうのはまあ日に日にというか月日を重ねるごとに感じますね。
Again, the further we get from the Marvel vs. Capcom's distribution, the collections distribution, and the release of the physical and the release of the Xbox One version when it eventually happens, the further we get away from that is just higher and higher and higher probabilities of us eventually getting a trailer for something actually brand new. That's all I'm going to say. Because at this point, the amount of stuff that's gone into this, at this point, the amount of stuff that has been updated in the way developers have been talking about it, and we're about to listen to them talk about it, to me, this no longer feels like it is impractical. This shit is happening, dude. And it's more about of when is it going to happen instead of if it's going to happen. Chances of shit going down start to exponentially get higher and higher and higher.
大きい、それがすごく大きいことをちょっと感じます。
2025 Game Awards? Who knows, dude? Who knows? We are in that. We are in that one reality.
Over the years, in quite a few ways, in gameplay, it's definitely modernized. Of course, I mean you've got both the 2v2 fighting games in the original Marvel vs. Capcom to the 3v3, which was really great. The addition of assists and such throughout the series has been awesome, and then the community impact has been astounding.
やっぱ自分
Who is Hiroyuki Nara? A designer at Capcom. Interesting. I'm wondering, I'm going to look this up. I'm curious, like, what his involvement is in the game. Because this is, it doesn't say that he was like a designer on the collection or something like that. I'm very curious. This leads me sort of like, so who are you? Because I'm not entirely familiar. And it's not like, do you deserve to be here? No. I'm wondering if they have history with the series at Capcom, or are you from the future? Are you from the future? Supervisor on Street Fighter 6. Okay. Manager on Rise. Worked on DMC 5 as an artist. Special thanks in MvCI. Worked on Street Fighter 5s. Well, shit. Oh, he's just the fucking director of Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. The whole director. So, and again, this is confusing. So you're like, we haven't heard of this guy before. Who is he? There's another name that was effectively synonymous with Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Marvel 3 in total. And that was Nitsuma-san. Wildly, present in media, talked about, was there to show off the game. Nitsuma-san went to another company, over like several years ago. Also did like the JoJo game back in the day, like directed that as soon as it came out, or was a part of it, but he was a lead producer. And the relationship of producers and directors to games can be a bit different, right? What they do and what they're responsible for can be a bit different than what we are familiar with producers and directors over in the US. So I am not entirely sure, right? But at the same point, having the title of friggin' director outside of Nitsuma being the producer of the game is a couple of the biggest roles you could have in a game of that kind, right? So ultimately speaking, we all think of Nitsuma-san when it comes to Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but no, this guy has been around the block at Capcom. Like, he was an artist on CVS 2. He was a motion animator on Devil May Cry 4. Oh my God. He was an artist going all the way back to a shit ton of, my dude was on MvC 1. My dude was on X-Men versus Street Fighter? That's crazy. Granted, he was a 2D artist at Capcom for a shit ton of time. until like the 3D era when he moved into some other stuff. But holy moly.
が選べるのがこう一体だけじゃないっていうところはまず
Exciting that not only one character you get to
純
choose
粋に
from.
こうワクワクするじゃないですか。どの組み合
I
わせ
feel
で
that one of the best things about the series is that you have
どう
options.
いう遊びができるのかなみたいなのはなんかそ
On
の
the variety of
選択があるのは
combinations
こ
you
の
can
シリー
make
ズのすごい
to
いいと
affect
ころ
your
だな
play
っていう
style.
思うのとそれが
Yeah.
その2になってそれを
Or
するに
2,
よっ
it
て
became 3 on 3 with a new level of
今度はその
strategies and the
交代
characters'
のその
tags and
駆け引きみた
assists.
いな戦略が生まれるっていうちょっとこの競技のゲームに一段上が
I
っ
think it
た
also
感
went
じ
up a
が
level as a
した
competitive
ので
game with
そ
a
こ
lot
の
of
そ
potential
の
for growth that is
伸びしろ
unique
って
to
いう
this
ところも
series.
すごいこのなんかシリーズならではの可能性みたいなのはあと単純にやっぱキャラクターいっぱい操れるっていうところは
Also, the simple fact that there were so many different characters available, which is something that other companies might not be able to do.
で一体一体
Each character has their own unique play feel, but since they're not too difficult,
でもそこまで難しくないっていうのが多分慣れ
it
るの
didn't
に
take
そん
much
な
time
時
for
間も
players
かか
to
んない
get
し
used to them.
今のゲームみたいに
Like today's games, you can play in a way to increase your skills and master a single
それで磨
character,
いていくっていう遊び方もあればこのシリーズみたいな
but you can
もうちょ
also
っとこう
play
リ
it
ラックスして
casually and have fun performing flashy moves in a
派手な
chaotic
はちゃ
game.
めちゃなゲームで
The
ちょ
appeal
っと
of
ストレス
MvC.
発散っていうのもできるしそういうところがすごい居場所としては
So I think this game was in a really good
良か
place.
ったんじゃないかなっていうのは感じます。
なんか一番
What I feel most now is the
感じる
passion
のは
of the community then and
の
now.
コミュニティの熱量と今のコミュニティの熱量大会とかって
I'm
すご
impressed by
く
the fact the level of
一定で
passion is
変わらなくて
constantly
常に
very
こう
high.
高い
Yeah.
。
We out here, boy. We out here, okay? I'm glad Matsumoto-san and everybody else, you know, at Capcom is recognizing that, like, man, these Marvel vs. Capcom fans are crazy.
水準で保たれてるなっていうのは結
I'm
構
impressed
印
by the
象
fact
的
that the
で
passion is very high and that many
変わら
people
なく
still like it as
好かれ
much as
て
they
るって
did
感
in
じ
the
が
past.
しま
This guy
す。
especially.
I feel like the cultural impact has just gone up over time.
Ooh, that's good. That is an official Marvel representative chat saying that the appeal of Marvel vs. Capcom has only gone up over time. Eh? Number go up, big happy. Okay. All right. Getting a max jump scare. I don't think I'm in this. I did an interview for these guys, but it was totally different.
そうですね。
At the time, we received a document that explained the type of game we were
企
going
画
to
が
make.
届いて、どうな
And
る
at
かは
first, I
正
wasn't
直
really
わかん
sure
なか
what
ったで
was
すけど
gonna happen.
やっぱ
It was meant to be a more casual and like a chaotic festival.
はちゃめちゃなお祭り誰でもこう
The
簡
concept
単に
was a
派手
game
な
where anyone can have fun
アクションが
performing
楽しめるみ
flashy
たいな
actions.
コンセプトにこう落とされてて今までの
Unlike the
カッ
very
プコンの
competitive and serious games that Capcom had put out in the past.
競技
Yeah.
的
I tell you, I have to remind people, one of the things that made me love X-Men vs. Street Fighter and the Marvel games so much was that I did not have to do double motions for fireballs and stuff, which were historically very hard. You didn't have to do like charge down, back, down, forward, up, forward to do a Guile super or something goofy. You didn't have to do that. So having the execution of just doing cool supers without having to like effectively mash your thumb against D-pads that are going to cause you to bleed was nice. It was like, oh, I can do this. I don't have to do, you know, reverse DPs and side switching, double fireball motions and all this stuff. As a kid, that was like daunting. So single action, 2 buttons. Brilliant. Brilliant.
的な対戦っていうところから
I was aiming for a game with a different direction, 100%.
形のゲームを目指すっていう内容だったのでビームとあと
The lasers and
普通の波動
Hadoukens
拳も
are giant
めっちゃパワーなんで
projectiles.
すよ今まで見慣れた
Even regular Hadoukens were
波動拳
much
じゃなかっ
different,
た
and
の
I
で
think that was the moment when people understood the game's direction. He's so right. Oh my God. I emphatically remember the first time I saw X-Men vs. Street Fighter, and you see Ryu, and you're like, okay, it's kind of looking like Street Fighter Alpha Ryu. I get it. Okay. And then the dude throws a fireball, and that bitch is the size of his whole body. It's like vertically the size of his whole body. I'm like, whoa, that's a huge ass fireball, my dude. And then Ken threw like tiny ones, but he had like much bigger fire uppercuts. And I was like, whoa, that's a bit different than before. So to me, I was one of those players, right? Even as like a 11-year-old or a 12-year-old or some shit, I was like, damn, dude, this shit. And then obviously the mega beam fireball, this is very different. These are juiced out versions of our characters, right?
あれだけでこのタイトル
I think one of the problems that Marvel vs. Capcom has had, especially with some of the Capcom characters, is not all of them, but especially like Shoto's, you know, like Ryu, is it didn't feel that over time Ryu got enough that made him feel like he was on a power level that could really keep up, even though they gave him some new stuff. You got like an install thing in Marvel 3, you gave him beam charges. They always try, but it still hovers around the core concept of what Ryu is, and that just isn't inherently super powerful in most MvC games outside of Tatsunoko versus Capcom, you know? So I feel like Ryu needs to get the new, like, you need to give Ryu like a new idea of what he could be in an MvC game outside of just being the way he has been for a long time now. Because they did that back in X-Men vs. Street Fighter. He was very different.
こっち行くんだなっていうのがす
He
ごい
needs a gun. He needs two
みんなが
guns.
多分分かった瞬間
Hadoukens are much bigger, and I thought the moment was good for the direction. Giant laser beams. Abnormally large
そういうのも
fireballs are being
大
shot.
きな巨大な弾を
Yes, I
出
love
して
it.
てこれが
Power levels are
that
off the
the-
charts. Created a new precedent, made everyone realize, oh yeah, that's what we're doing
あ
now.
そっちにはっちゃけんのねっていう
Hell yeah.
And you've got the Capcom characters that everybody loves, but you also have the Marvel characters that people have grown up with. And seeing them together in something that you wouldn't have expected would exist, and then keeps getting people to come back. Like, I wouldn't have thought that I could play as Mega Man and Spider-Man together on a team. Like, it's so cool having those unique mashups.
まあ、ストリートファイターもそう
Dude, Mega Man and Spider-Man were the two hero characters of MvC 1. I think in most of the art for that game, like the primary key art of MvC 1, the two main characters that are usually squaring off with each other is actually not entirely Ryu and like Spider-Man. It's mostly Mega Man and Spider-Man, and they really lean in on that.
ですけど、うんまあ、
Street Fighter Marvel's characters have a strong identity and
キャラ
charm.
クターとかがもの
Hell
すご
yeah.
く個性的で魅力的
Hell yeah, we're
で
using MvC 1 art.
多
Let's
分で
fucking
すけ
go.
ど
This is just my guess for those who grew up reading the comics, got to see them actually moving in the game.
動いている。で、それを自分が
And being able to control them myself left a memorable impression.
印象的だったし、それがすごくその
The lasting impression remained in the players' hearts and is the reason why.
それがずっと語り継がれていって継続して楽しまれてるし、もっと新しく
People kept talking about it and playing it to this day. I like how we're reverting back to MvC 1 art because it's the GOAT, you know? A lot of people say, like, Mega Man, they put a lot of love, care, and attention into Mega Man and MvC 1. I agree with you. In fact, MvC 1 Mega Man is no shit my favorite Mega Man sprite they've ever made. And it looks way better in a comparable time frame when they were making like Mega Man 7 and like Mega Man 8. Dude, how the hell is the fighting game sprite of Mega Man so much better than what's going on in his actual game series at the time?
ところがあるのかなと思ってま
Right
す
in your
で、
nuts, Juggernaut.
当然その
All
大
these
会
games
と
were
か
played in
でも
tournaments at the time and
採
continue
用
to
さ
be
れた
played
りし
even
たり
today.
新しく、そのマーベルのタイトルが採用されたりしているので、そういったところもやっぱり
And these games left a
みんな
long
の中
lasting
では
impression.
印象的だった部分。やっぱりそれはキャラクター
Because
が
the characters
すごく
themselves have a lot of
魅力
charm.
的だからな
Yeah?
んだろうなってます。
Again, it's just like completely opposite. Are we noticing that the way these things are being talked about is just polar opposite of the stuff we would have been hearing about 7-ish years ago with a game like Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite? The way this communication is, and I don't want to remind people of the negative things in the past, but this is a beneficial situation here to remind you the way these concepts are being communicated are polar opposite of what the hell we had issue with 7 years ago, you know?
まあ自分がやった3は一番好き
Marvel
なんですけ
3 is the
ど
one I
そ
worked.
れ以外だったら
Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is what I worked on, so that's probably my favorite, but the first Marvel vs. Capcom was great. It's funny. I think he means in like an actual director role, because he did parts of the other games, but it was like, I'd say small, like object creation. You're making like, you know, what a projectile looks like, what a thing in the background looks like, all that kind of stuff. So been around for a long time, but having a responsibility to how the game looks, how the game feels, how it plays, what you do in it, how it characters, like that was effectively his job with Marvel 3.
最初のマーベル VS カップ
The first Marvel vs. Capcom was
一
great.
番最
Yes.
初は
I played a lot of
手探り
versus X-Men Marvel
結構
superheroes
X-Men
on my own
とか
research.
まあその次のマーベルスーパーヒーローズのバーサスやったりしてたんですけど、まあちゃんと
And Venom was the character who I gave my all to, so I have a lot of fond memories of the series that he
のが
makes an
ベノムだっ
appearance
たの
in.
で、
Shit.
それが出てるシリーズはまあちょっといろいろ思い出深いなと。
I saw a bunch of characters that I resonated with and grew up with, and then I saw my favorite video game character of all time, which is
As a developer, you forget a lot of the stuff you've worked on. I have a dedicated fan base that reminds me of things I have said in the past, and they eventually come true, that I have completely forgotten I made videos about. After you make so many thousands of things for so many years, you have no clue what the hell. What did you do 5 years ago? Six and a half years ago, you made a video about this. What did you mean? And I'm like, my dude, I don't know what I fucking ate for lunch 3 days ago.
Man in there, and from there I was hooked.
まあまず
First off, his body is wearing a
Well,
suit, but he's super muscular, and we had to be
Venom,
detailed about his
ス
musculature.
ーツ着てるとはいえ、まあムキムキの体してるんで、
So cool.
まあ、筋肉をちゃんと描くっていうところはすごい、まあ、丁寧に当時開発フロアに
You know what I
Venom
love is that
figure.
it seems that even developer wise, that's an interesting screenshot. Venom's gonna get punched in the dick. The whole point of MVCI Beyond, because I've always felt that Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was about as close to MVC1 as you could get outside of characters. Just thematically speaking, 2v2 gameplay stuff. It's like it brings back the 4 characters on screen at one point, you know, all that kind of shit. That was very apparent to me in MVCI, which is why I always liked the game. I always thought it was like a spiritual successor to MVC1 in everything but visuals, which was the whole point in Beyond of us working on the Beyond project to get that game closer to MVC1 era visuals, you know? So it's nice that it's not just me that resonates so much with Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and its art style and its feel and its characters and shit. Because in my opinion, it is the arguable like pinnacle of the series when it comes to that stuff.
いろんな机の上に置いてあったんですね。カプコンの
It's not like it was a Capcom tradition, but everyone
な
had
んかみ
one.
んな持ってるんですよ。ベノムのフィギュアって。こういうポーズしたや
One
つ
that does this kind of
で
pose.
それをずっとこう見てきたっていう
So
の
we
が
had
あった
lots
の
of
で
chances to see this. Everyone brought them so they can study his
筋肉の勉強になるっていう
muscles.
のでみんな買ってたんですよ。でいざそのキャラ作んなきゃいけないって
It's a figure that everyone is familiar and understands the
まあ
quality
ずっとこう見て
benchmarks.
きたフィギュアのクオリティは、まあ、みんなが知って
So
る
everyone
し
knew the figure and understood what we had to aim
それ
for.
ちゃんとやらなきゃ
That made
な
things
っていう
stressful
の
when
が
it came time to create the
プレッ
characters.
シャーです。あとは地味に
Also, this may seem simple, but his pattern
大変だった
actually took a
のが
lot of work. Oh
模様
yeah,
ですね。
animating that from every frame
こ
and
こ
every
雲
angle.
の模様
Jesus.
があるんですけど
He has a pattern of a spider right here, but it
動
actually
いたりもするん
moves.
ですよ。はい。スーツとはいえ
Yeah, it moves and it translates to all of his transformation shit.
固定してるだけなのでベノム
Oh, I
自体が
know.
剥がれたりすることもあって模様をちゃんと描かなきゃいけないっていうのも
Actually, a drawing of the pattern needs to be clear regardless of what angle you're looking at it from. And also limited sprites, right? You're not going to be able to make out this image because you only have so many sprites to work with.
でもちゃんと模様として分かるようにまあ
Since it was pixel art, it had its limitations, but we still had to do a professional job illustrating this so it doesn't look deformed.
そこをこうちゃんと描ききるっていうのは
まあまず
Of course, we want everyone to have fun, but I also hope people notice and appreciate the animation
注
of
目
the
しても
characters.
らいたいのはやっぱりキャラクターの動きこれその今すごく
Even seeing these animations made during the 90s, you can still appreciate the quality.
当時90年代に
Gambit, bro.
作っでそれが違
Gambit
和
sprite,
感
my
なく
god.
躍動感ある感じでキャラクターがヒーローたちが動
Move
いてるってと
dynamically
ころ
without
を
any sense of
対
awkwardness.
戦してるとなかなかね見づらいかもしれないですけど人が対戦してるとことか見
It'd
て
be difficult when you see when you're playing against
その
someone, but
キャ
I
ラ
hope
クターの
people
動きとか
appreciate the awesome
エフェクト
animations
と
and
か
effects.
でモーションを見てもらいたいなって思いあとは音楽めちゃめちゃいいので
Also, the music is great
聴いてほしい
too, so I hope people take notice.
とりあえず
I think it's fine to play with your favorite characters and not get too hung up about winning
好
or
きなキャラク
losing.
ターを動かして遊んでもらえたらそれでいいんじゃないかなとでなんとなく派手な技出るんで
It doesn't take
楽
much
し
to
い
do
気分には
flashy
なりやす
moves,
いと思いま
so I
す
think that allows players to have fun.
で、まあ慣れてきたらちょっと勝
Once
負
you
って
get
いう
comfortable, you can
とこ
play
ろ
for
に
real in a competitive setting. Damn, the
肘を
Yikes
置いてみ
versus
る
Clockwork
っていう
match? Jesus.
いう遊び方もできますし、ずっとこうキャラクター眺めてるっていうのも
You can just enjoy
いい
watching
と
the
思
cool
うんで
animations of the characters. Yep.
There's so many different combinations of, specials and assists and skill sets and move sets between all the characters that you can really never go wrong with who you choose. So just enjoy who you're playing with.
This is a new MvC video put out by Capcom, or the Marvel vs. Capcom channel. With all the devs.
Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection.
And that's it. So, yeah, direct interviews with people that work at Marvel, direct interviews with the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 director talking about the collection, weirdly enough, who had involvement in these games in some way, but was not directly responsible for a lot of their creation. Fascinating, right? All I'll say is that it's fascinating. There's just more things being put out there from the Marvel vs. Capcom marketing team, and this YouTube channel still exists. This is now still a thing that is getting content, and people are like effectively watching it. Is it popping off entirely? Well, maybe not entirely, because these are shared amongst a ton of media networks. This shit came out months ago, And to me, that does not happen very often, where you have a game that comes out, especially a collection of old games that comes out, and you still have like marketing planned for it somewhat months later. That's pretty fascinating. And I've worked on several Capcom games that are collections of old games 10 plus years ago, So to see this stuff continuing forward just also gives me a relatively good amount of confidence about where these things are, that this wasn't a small time commitment that just ends with the Marvel vs. Capcom collection. This isn't a bunch of licenses they bought just to release a collection.